In Love. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and I've been a medical cannabis patient for about 5 years now. I use cannabis for my pain and muscle spasms, and I found that about 2 years after my accident, being on heavy narcotics, so opiates of all sorts, I was on tramadol and Neurontin and Vicodin and oxycodone, and the list goes on and on. Over that period of time, I felt like I lost who I was. I was depressed, extremely anxious. I was angry at everything, and really just didn't want to do anything. I didn't perform well at work, and so my life really wasn't where it should have been. The quality of life was unacceptable, really, to me and my family and my friends around me. I found that cannabis really made a huge difference for me. My neurologist and I had a long conversation about 2 years after my accident, and suggested that I try cannabis. And so I started to ingest large amounts of cannabis, large amounts according to the law enforcement later on down the road. But that started to make a huge difference. I was able to decrease my opiate intake and all the other pharmaceuticals. My stomach felt better. I felt clearer in my head. I was able to think. I was able to perform better at work. My appraisals at work got better. And so
I
actually
bring up a subject that people bring to me all the time, and that's marijuana. Everyone knows marijuana is a good anti-nausea medicine. You should see the way that people can go through some lasagna or some brownies when they've been smoking marijuana. It is true. Marijuana, available from your corner drug dealer, is actually a decent antiemetic on its own. It comes as a prescription medication known as Marinol. This contains the 9-tetrahydrocannabinol, which is a fairly decent antiemetic. However, neither the agricultural product or the pharmaceutical product are as effective as the other drugs and medications that we have available. So we don't use it very often, and to buy this is quite expensive. The only persons that I recommend this for are those who are habituated to marijuana, and in that case it might be useful for them. But for the average person, these
video,
really aren't very useful.
I want to talk to you about the acute benefits that cannabis has as a lung cleanser. It's known to heal the lungs. It's known to increase your respiratory capacity, and being asthmatic, I can't think of anything that I would rather use than cannabis to go on a period of cleansing and restoration of respiratory capacity. So to just quickly summarize the benefits of going on a smoke break and then using cannabis to help lung cleansing, the immediate benefits that you should notice after probably only 2 or 3 days of using cannabis edibles is that you will have increased lung capacity. Many people report up to 20 to 30%. You will have reduction in mucus production, and you'll also feel the mucus kind of fade away or be removed from your lung lining. Any kind of irritation that has come from whether it be smoking or air pollutants, you will feel that irritation dissolve away or be healed by the cannabis, and you'll feel an increase in the natural kind of breathing cycle, your natural breathing rhythms, which is the way that breathing should be. If you're feeling like you have to force breath, then that may be because of stress. It may be you haven't been taking care of your lung health. Going on a cannabis lung cleanse, you will feel that natural breathing rhythm come back to your breathing, which is the way that it is.
According to Epilepsy Ontario, there are more than 40 types of seizures, all of which fall into 2 major categories: generalized seizures and partial seizures. Generalized seizures result in the involuntary movement of all body parts and usually last a couple minutes. Typically, generalized seizures are hereditary, and sufferers have no memory of the event when it's over. Like generalized seizures, partial seizures may cause uncontrolled movements. These seizures are further classified based on whether a person's ability to respond and remember is affected. Many things can cause partial seizures, including head injuries, brain infections, strokes, tumors, or genetics. Frequently, no known cause is found. Because epilepsy is such a broad disease with many classifications, treatments are tailored to patients, and when no approved pharmaceutical drugs work, families are often forced to seek alternative treatments like cannabis. The plant is becoming increasingly popular to treat many types of epilepsy. More specifically, epileptics are consuming cannabis that is being bred to be high in CBD, the main non-psychoactive compound in the plant, and low in THC, the main psychoactive chemical. This treatment became especially popular when news detailing the case of 6-year-old Charlotte Figge came to light.
Charlotte, besides being dear to my heart, is a 6-year-old. And like most little 6-year-olds, yeah, there's Chase, there's her twin sister. And like most 6-year-olds, Charlotte, she just loves the color pink, loves to go play in the woods with her twin sister Chase and her older brother Max. She also happens to be one of the most frequent cannabis users that I know. There it is. There's the word cannabis. It's a plant that Charlotte Figge uses a lot of to control her grand mal seizures. And in no uncertain terms, Charlotte's life depends on this plant. You see, Charlotte was diagnosed when she was 3 months old with a very, very rare and violent form of epilepsy known as Dravet syndrome. And Charlotte will experience a very high number of what we call tonic-clonic or grand mal seizures. About one every 20 to 25 minutes, guys. And these seizures will last anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes. So in essence, Charlotte's life is spent in a seizure and catatonic state. Twice, Charlotte's mother, Paige, has had to bring her back to life using CPR. At any given time, Charlotte will be on 7 daily different pharmaceutical seizure medications, none of which control her seizures. When Charlotte was 5 years old, her seizures had reached their worst. And her medical team told the Figge family things like, start making preparations for her death. She's probably not gonna wake up from this. And the Figges reluctantly signed a do not resuscitate order for Charlotte around this time. And she was sent home with a fitted chair, a feeding tube in her belly as she'd lost all of her life skills. And the family to say their goodbyes. Wasn't the end for Charlotte. And the Figges weren't about to give up hope. And so when Paige called us that February, told us of Charlotte's condition, we were ready to jump in. We were ready to help. In fact, we couldn't wait until Paige dropped the bomb on us. Charlotte was 5 years old. And think about it for a minute. We're gonna give a 5-year-old cannabis? Literally, visions of this were popping in my head. But we got over this pretty quickly, and we began to extract and formulate in ratio a non-psychoactive, lab-tested pediatric tincture for Charlotte. And I'm happy to tell you that within the first administration, Charlotte went from having a seizure every 20 to 25 minutes, that's 400 a week, guys, down to 0 to 1 per week.
The purpose of this video is to talk to you about my experiences over the years with cannabis and asthma, and hopefully if you're an asthma sufferer as well, you can learn something from what I've learned and from my experiences. So I've been an asthma sufferer since I was a baby. I have no recollection of ever not being considered an asthma sufferer. When I was a baby, I was on some kind of syrup that the doctors prescribed for asthma, and as an adult and as a teenager, I've always been on Ventolin and on I believe it's some kind of preventative medication that I believe includes steroids. I've also been a cannabis user ever since I was a teenager, but during my teenage years that was always combusting cannabis, and I only had a small number of edibles experiences at things like music festivals, so I never really made the connection between cannabis and asthma, and never thought or understood or believed that cannabis could be beneficial for asthma. So the time that I really started to think about this concept of using cannabis to treat asthma was a few years ago when our family had an uncle who was suffering with multiple sclerosis. So when you research multiple sclerosis, you learn that it's a condition that affects your nervous system, your muscles, your brain, and some of the symptoms include spasms. And then when you go and research some of the other medical conditions that cannabis can treat, you make the connection between things like muscular spasms and degeneration of the nervous system. All of these symptoms, I made that connection between the different conditions that people are treating with cannabis and my asthma. So I thought, okay, well, why don't I try to use cannabis one time and see how it does affect my asthma directly. So one day I just come back from a trip from Ninh. I had a big jar of natural, quite mild cannabis that I used to create a tincture. It was a very crude tincture. I believe I used Bundaberg OP rum, and I soaked the cannabis in the rum for a number of days and then strained it out so that all I had left was the alcohol with the essence of the cannabis. Please don't try that at home. Do something more advanced to make a tincture. Research it, or hopefully in Australia one day you'll be able to be prescribed something like this. And then when an asthma attack came, I just put the tincture in a fruit smoothie and consumed it. So within half an hour to an hour of consuming my crude cannabis tincture, I did find that it had a very direct and powerful effect on my asthma attack. So I've always found that my asthma had been triggered in two ways, and one of those ways was when there was an external substance like maybe pollen, or if I was in a pub or a club and there was lots of tobacco smoke. Those kind of external substances being inhaled could trigger my asthma. But there was also, I guess, a psychosomatic aspect of asthma attacks.